Yeah, so I like so I just come back and just come back and person and
It's like it's something that happens but it's hard for me to
And if you haven't started sharing how it could have been different if you had not been in fear mode, then switch into that.
So again, like it happens in small ways. Yeah. I just feel like there's been some narrative especially
And now bring first partner, share to close and switch over. Hi, you guys enjoying? So you can share with each other, just talking about the time when a fearful experience made you react in a not so wise way. And yours will be a little bit abbreviated, maybe like a minute each. Right? 6:30. Sorry.
You always think about it later, like what you could have said to yourself.
Yeah.
But in the moment, you're so pushing yourself about what later on in the call, you just
Yeah. I know sometimes like when that happens, the energy is still there. It wasn't expressed.
Yeah. And I always say, next time I'll be more cautious. Because you're constantly
And you two bring it into shifting for the other person. And for this group, if you haven't started talking about how it would have been different, if you'd had a little bit more resources, a little less fear in your system, how it could have been different. Start shifting into that.
Something in your life. Yeah.
it's really hard. Even just like outside of going through your scratch and somebody took me put a car in front of me, is that what they use? And then I was like, I was walking up too, as information, and I was in that station, and at the moment, And didn't do any of the things like show the line. So if I look on, that really quickly. I didn't get her dress. I was just like, give her. So yeah, I just took her basic information, and then later I realized, now, all these months later, I realized that.
Then start bringing your share to completion.
Remain calm and center yourself, you know, in these moments of intense anxiety. This anxiety is never, it's never the point
And 30 seconds to wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank your partner for sharing. It's really powerful when we share our fears. Thank you for being so willing to participate. So, have any of you heard the phrase, don't just stand there, do something? Yeah? Well, I like to reword it and say, don't just do something, stand there. Because oftentimes when we get, you know, like the call from the bank or the, you know, person almost hits us or whatever, our fear system takes over and we like to jump into action to correct or react to whatever's happening. But again, if it's an instinctive thing, yes, you're gonna want to swerve out of the way or whatever. But when it's a circumstance where you know you need to respond, but you know it's not a matter of seconds, it's really important. Maybe even then too, it's really important to invite yourself to just stop for a moment and take a deep breath. Breathing is really helpful, and to recognize what's happening in your body. So when we have a fear response, we get a lot of energy in our system. And one of the things that I realize is that energy is a gift. It's one of those gifts that we get in the time of crisis. It's actually energy that's supposed to help us through the challenge. But it's not helpful if we let a pattern or a program use that energy up. It's better to be aware of what's going on, recognize we probably got a huge adrenaline burst, take some nice deep breaths and respond. If that energy isn't needed, like run, pick up the car and save the baby, then that energy can get trapped in the body. Like, you know, our emotional response to finding out that, you know, somebody we love has just gotten a terrible diagnosis, it doesn't require a physical, you know, rescue experience, but we still get hit with the same impact of energy, right, that we contract. And when we hold it in our bodies, it gets stuck there. It can quickly turn into pain, instantly often turns into pain. And if it's not dispelled, it can turn into disease. You know, and at the very least, if we're not letting it flow through, we're contracted and our vision is worse, our hearing is worse. So we can't really, even in a time of crisis, we're restricted. We can't respond with as many resources. So it's really important to stop and know how to let some of that energy go. So breathing's really important. And then one of the methods that I use with my clients when we make contact with subconscious patterns, it works the same way, is finding out where's that energy lodged? Where's that story lodged? Where's that subconscious pattern lodged? You can tell because you start paying attention to your body when it gets triggered and it hurts, or there's a contraction, there's a tightness. So often it's here, it can be in here, it can be in here. Here, sometimes it's in your ear or in your foot, you know, but just to notice where did all that energy go. And you can, I like to just breathe into it. I imagine sending the breath to those places. If it needs a little bit of waking up, you know? Actually like, hey, it's okay, you're safe to come out. You don't need to hide in there energy. It's okay. There isn't a jaguar that's gonna eat you right now. So you can come out. You can tap it, pat it, shake it out, exercise, but some way of consciously letting that energy out of the body. And when it's an internal practice with the subconscious, this is how I'm going to share with you the process of, I call it spiritual composting. Are you ready for it? Sure. So you want to write down some notes. I am actually writing a mini book on it, and it'll be coming out hopefully soon, but it's not quite ready for release yet. So the first thing that you want to do, and it's like the most powerful tool against, I don't know, it's my most powerful tool, period, in any kind of crisis, any kind of challenge, or any kind of lovely experience in my life, is to have a curious and open mind. Because if our mind is open and curious, then we are preventing ourselves from going into old stories. And old stories are what our subconscious is living off of. That happened before, A happened and then B happened, so C is the next step. And we tell ourselves that story, and every time some kind of stimulus comes up that looks similar, we go into that pattern. A plus B equals C, and that's going to be the next thing. And even if our conscious mind doesn't want it to happen, what's even more important is that we believe that we can predict the future. We like things that are predictable. We like thinking that we know what's happening. We've got it figured out. It's that illusion of control. It makes us feel like we're safe. And so it's really important that we manifest those realities, even though it's like the one thing we really don't want to happen, and then we end up manifesting it. That's one of the reasons that the patterns happen over and over again. It's your mind trying to make you feel safe. You can survive. You're not going to get out of that broken pattern, but it worked before. You're still alive, so it'll work again. If your mind stays open and curious, then those stories can't happen. You're not coming to a conclusion. What might happen next? What's going on right now? Being in the curious mind versus, oh, I know how this goes. A plus B and then C. If you're in curious mode, that story can't happen. And when we don't have the story, then the emotional responses also aren't happening either. Because we emotional responses happen when we create a story. If we stay in the curiosity place, we're not as likely to get overwhelmed by fear. What's happening now? What's going to happen? What's going to happen next? How does it get better? I'm curious. And so with spiritual composting, we sit in a quiet space, kind of meditative, and we first cultivate a curious mind and ask the mind to be a sacred witness, to let go of whatever it thinks it's figured out before. The mind will not, we don't want the mind to shut off, we just want it to switch roles. We want it to be really observant. And that's its only job, paying attention. Not figuring it out, not forecasting, letting go of the opinions and preferences, just paying attention. And we go in and we connect with the part of the body where that subconscious program is housing itself. But before we make contact, we have to do something else, which is to go in basically with an open heart as well, a compassionate heart. And the reason that we have to do that is because if we're going to make contact with these subconscious patterns, well, they're all in the subconscious realm because at some point, something that we did, some behavior that we had was labeled by somebody as bad, annoying, shameful, weak, some negative label was put on that behavior. And so it's like, okay, it's not safe up here. I gotta go down in there. And there's a judgment about it. And even though we like to think that we aren't judging ourselves, we take it on. Like it goes down in there. And then we start to look at it as like, yeah, that isn't a part of me that I really want people to see, because that's my shadow. And when it reveals itself, it's sabotaging me. You know, I said the wrong thing, you know, I showed up late, I didn't mean to, I wrote this thing down wrong, or whatever it is. And then, you know, like that's the bad part of me. So then we push it down even more. It has even less permission to be real. And so it's important to cultivate a sense of loving compassion with the heart. And even if we're just pretending, because at first you kind of have to pretend, I don't judge this part of me, you know, like, oh, it'd be nice to wave the magic wand. But just for a moment, just suspend the judgment. And for clients that I have who really feel riddled with shame, I invite them to bring in a compassion avatar. So somebody in their life that they can connect with. It could be somebody you know personally, like my grandma, my abuelita. She loved me no matter what. She could hear anything, and I knew she would always, you know, have something kind to say. Or it could be, you know, a guru. It could be an archetype, you know. But I asked them to bring that compassionate mentoring, basically, to reflect a sense of acceptance about the self. Because when we do that, that's another really powerful tool in accessing the subconscious. So the subconscious is like those patterns, that resistance and that, oh my God, denial, like they are so smart. They are so good at evading, you know, like you can't catch me, you know, like they don't want to be seen. They're afraid of being extricated, you know. And there are some therapy practice that I call them like spiritual plastic surgery, you know, like you don't like that part of yourself, you get rid of it. But I don't believe that that's okay. I believe that every single part of us, just like everything that comes our way is a gift, I believe that every single part of us is treasure. In fact, I think that the shadow pieces are probably our most wise guides. And I actually don't believe in sabotage. I just like had that, and I'll maybe have time to go into that later, but there's a lot of wisdom in there. It's just been mislabeled. And if we go in there with the judgment, and it's so good at hiding out, it's going to see us coming a mile away. It's going to run, it's going to hide, it's going to do all the avoidance tactics that it's used before to keep it safe. But if we go in with a gentle approach, even if we're just pretending or suspending, you know, our normal behavior for a moment, to go in and say, I'm curious. I want to understand what you have to say. And I'm willing to suspend my judgment for just a moment, to listen to you and be kind and extend a sense of loving kindness your way. About 90% of the time when I'm working with clients, that part is so grateful and instantly shows up and starts talking. Has something to say. It's not always happy. It's not always pleasant. Sometimes it's like, why the F didn't you listen to me before? Or, you know, why have you been treating me? Like there can be a little bit of angst, but actually most of the time it's just happy. Like, oh my God, I've been down here trying to communicate with you. So our pain, like all those sabotaging behaviors, here we are. All those sabotaging behaviors, it's really just this wise guide inside of you that's like, you're not living in alignment, I call it with your prayer, but your goal, your mission, you know, it's just your internal guide that's like, it's not totally online, and it's trying to get your attention. You know, it's a signal, but we view it as pain. Just like you cut your arm, you know, you don't like, oh, that's terrible, you know, I don't want to have anything to do with that, you know, and just walk around with your like arm behind you like, oh gosh, I got to go take care of that. I'm going to clean it out and put some salve on it and whatever it needs to heal, right? You know, internal pain is exactly the same. It's just something that's like, hey, I have something important to share. You could have a better life, or, you know, there's some really important information you might like to hear. And then so the more we avoid it, the louder it gets. And so one of the things that I learned in my journey of studying the subconscious mind and going through my own total life meltdown was, and I did it, I just want a little side note, thanks to plant medicine, which I work with, had the opportunity, the plant medicine showed me that I was running away from my fear and that I needed to just turn around. It showed me how to do it, to turn around and face it and quit labeling it as fear. To realize it's just a red light that's like, come pay attention, please, over here. And when I quit labeling it as fear and just, what do you have to say? What's happening? How can I help you? All of a sudden, all this information started happening. I had all this extra information. So all these parts of the self that have gone underground into the basement, they're really bright. They're very in tune. You know, they're the body senses, right? They're really tuned into what's happening. You know, they're on alert. And as soon as we start listening to them, they're not so scared anymore. They're not alone, they're not isolated, they're connected, just like human beings. You know, somebody's listening to me now, yay! What I have to say matters, and it's helpful. And then all of a sudden, over time, sometimes it's super fast. Sometimes it takes a little while to mend that relationship because it's a part of the self that's been labeled, mislabeled for so long that it takes a while for it to trust. Like, if I really come out, do I get to sit at the table with you? Is it safe? So it can take a little while to build up that trust. And so that's what I help my clients to do, move through the judgment. And it can get really messy because there's like the internal critic, right? That's been judging, that little wounded one, but the critic also has some really helpful information, and that can get all messy, and then like the conscious self is like, who's talking? So it can get kind of knotted up. And that's why it's helpful to have somebody who can kind of keep track of all that stuff to untangle the knots and get everybody talking respectfully, kindly, and over time, realizing that's like one of your biggest allies. They're one of your biggest allies. And they can come up into the conscious realm. And you don't even need to do that practice of diving in, you know, not with that particular pattern anyway. It's no longer a broken, stuck pattern. It's this incredible new awareness that's been there the whole time and trying to talk to you the whole time. It's just been muffled, mislabeled, and misperceived. It's super powerful. So just like those challenges that come in from the outside, they're all gifts from inside as well. They're all gifts. It's just important to unwrap it a little bit. Cool?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Whew, that was a lot. Let's take a big breath. So I'm going to encourage you right now, let's just do a brief internal experience. And I'm not going to make you dive deep into the subconscious realms right now, but we're going to send a message to the subconscious. You can close your eyes, feel yourself grounding in, feel your body connected with the earth, where your body's touching a chair or whatever's holding you up against gravity, feeling yourself being held. And just, you know, if it works for you, if it feels true for you, don't do anything that's inauthentic. The subconscious can totally tell if you're not being authentic. But if it feels true for you, then you can repeat this message internally, or you can shift it so that it's a more authentic representation. Just like, I'm going to start making peace with you, subconscious. I'm going to start trying to listen to you a little bit without judgment. I'm going to keep my mind open as best I can. I'm probably going to mess it up because this is new. But I'm really interested in not being at war with you anymore and labeling you as the bad, wrong part of me. I'm really curious about getting to know you as my ally, as my teammate. Breathe that in. Let that communication happen. however it works for you. So everybody experiences these inner journeys differently. Some people have very visual experiences. Some people have very kinesthetic and energetic experiences. Some people actually hear their subconscious talking. Some people see things that don't make sense. It takes a while. It can take a while to start to learn the language of your subconscious. So just let the mind be open and curious and see if there's some response. Let your mind be aware of all the senses and how the subconscious might be responding. It may simply be your nervous system relaxed a whole lot and your breath just got deeper. There may be even a little bit of emotion that bubbles up. Whatever it is, just notice it and say thank you. Even if it was quiet, that's okay. That doesn't mean you didn't do it right. It just means that that part of you is a little afraid to be seen right now. And we understand. So we're going to extend that compassion towards that part of the self and thank it for participating. And you can feel yourself coming back. So, how was that for you? I'm just curious if anybody has anything that they'd like to share about that experience. It's okay.
Calming,
Mm-hmm.
just dropping in the presence
Mm-hmm.
and attunement,
Mm-hmm.
whether the listening ear is available. So one of the things that came to me as I have been really fascinated with the subconscious mind, that I believe, and the great thing about what I'm teaching is that it doesn't require belief in God or any higher power other than believing that you have a higher self that's not limited by your history, your injuries, your wounds, like there's a higher self that like has the brain that experiences the whole picture. And a lot of research to support all the things that I'm sharing. So on a scientific basis, this all works, which I love. It doesn't require that particular belief system. But I'll share my personal belief about the imagination, which is it's kind of infinite. I mean, it is. It's completely infinite. So you've got your mind full of all kinds of ideas, right? And I could share something with you that you've never heard of before, right? Your imagination expands. And there's not going to there might be a point where like, okay, I need a little break to take it all in. But there's really no limit to the ideas that the imagination can receive, yeah? So it's the one part of the human experience that's limitless, the imagination. And I don't think we nearly value it as much as we should. Because for me, like what I believe is that's the portal to God, Goddess, Holy, the holies. It's our infinite self. And that's where we find our superpowers. So once we deal with the subconscious stuff, then you can start going into what's possible for me. And that's another reason to have a curious mind, is to stay open and cultivate your imagination. Because keeping it open while you're in the imagination, for me, I believe that that's where we receive those inspirations. Those like, hey, this might be a good idea for you. Go get your degree at CIIS. Forget that traditional school. Or forget school and, travel the world or whatever it is. But how do we know what, some people we see them and like they're living their purpose, right? They move with confidence. They know what they're here to do. They're passionate about it. And every step they take, you can tell. They know what they're doing. And wouldn't it be nice to feel that way? You know, how do you feel that way? How do you live your life in a place of confidence for the next step you're certain of? Being curious about what your mission is. Being receptive in the realm of limitless possibility. A curious mind. It gives you a clear answer in the moment. Because when we try to predict, like, you know, I started realizing as I worked with imagination, and I would go into, when I was little, I would go into limitlessness. I would ponder time with no beginning and no end, and I would end up there. I would get it. I would totally get what infinity was. And then it would pop me out as soon as I tried to wrap my brain around it. It's like, because you're human, you can't comprehend it as a human being. It doesn't work. So, so Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so now we know how to tap into our subconscious and break out of the patterns that have us stuck doing the same thing over and over. Because the interesting thing is, you've probably noticed it yourself, is that, you know, some relationship or job or something just like falls apart, and it's like, I am never doing that again. You know, next time it's going to be different, right? And then what happens? You do everything you can possibly think of to make it different, and somehow it happens again because of those subconscious patterns. So once we break that, then now you're left to that. That's actually really scary, and I think that's one of the subconscious fears that keeps us stuck. Once you're free of all that, you actually have a choice. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to share with your partner. If you were limitless, what would you do with your life? Take a couple minutes each. I'll tell you when to switch. Person with the longest hair goes first.
Then wrap up the first partner within the next 30 seconds and switch over to the next partner.
Just that.
You're at the books.
And second partner in the next 30 seconds or so, bring your show to a close. Thank your partner for sharing your visions and dreams. It's a big deal too. It's really important. So how was that for everybody? Anybody want to share? You don't have to share your visions and dreams, but how was it? Was it challenging for some people? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I open my talks with, telling people that a magic genie, they found a magic genie lantern and they rub it and the genie pops out and says, you get one wish. What is it? And this brings up a lot of stuff for people. Like, I don't know. And usually in the initial calls that I have with potential clients and new clients, when I ask them, what's your vision for your life? That is sometimes the most challenging question. Because like I said, we don't really tend to value the imagination, and yet it's rich. It's our access to our infinite selves. And so if it was challenging for you, then I'm going to challenge you to drop into your imagination. Like I think it was the White Queen, think 6 impossible things every morning before breakfast. Allow your imagination to go crazy. What's in there?
How? What are some of the clues to some of the pathways to opening our imaginations?
Well, they're different for different people. Like, movement. Movement's really helpful. If your mind feels stuck, to move your body. Just automatic writing, just writing, whatever comes, even if it doesn't make any sense. Just letting it sort of come out. Or sit down with the question that I just asked you. Like, if I was limitless, if I didn't have any restrictions of time or health or money, what would I do? Answer that every day. Let yourself go into it as deeply as you can possibly imagine. Also bringing all the senses into it, it's really powerful.
Like doing novel things, put your mind into
Absolutely.
new grooves. Like if you've never lain down on a sidewalk, right?
Yeah. Don't try it in the mission unless, I don't know if there's enough footage to lay down safely in the mission, but yes. Yeah, try something unusual. Yeah. Beautiful. So that's all that I have to share with you today, but I want to open it up to questions, and we're already doing that. So do you have any questions for me? Yeah.
Well, it's a sort of jump off of what you were saying. Your question was, how do you do that? Your question was, how do you get into that creative zone, correct? In order to name those exact things, those exact visions that you might have for yourself. Like in my case, it's deeply personal, but it's what the hell does it matter? Like
I shared my meth husband addicted to meth story. So
Right. Well, it's personal just because it feels vulnerable to say it, but
Yeah.
I have never had that problem. Like I can become very detailed in my visions and my imagination about, how I want to be living my life energetically and what that might look like. It's not an exact thing. There's no one exact way. I could see 3 or 4 different scenarios and me being equally as fulfilled in any one of those 4. But what happens to me is that it's not that I have a problem with the imagination. And the problem is that I don't dare imagine anymore, because I've been imagining and trying for so long without any success that it's just completely shut down. So it's a bitterness and a jadedness is taken over, and it's just like even I could feel the resistance inside me when you said do it every morning, and there's like that shadow side gremlin inside. It's just like, F that, I'm not going to put myself through that every morning. I can't, I don't dare continue the dream because it's just a disappointment. It's just a big disappointment. So that's where I'm stuck in that bitterness, in that, it's impossible. It can't happen for me. That's where, I need some major shifting and support.
Thanks for sharing that. I completely relate. I've been there and like, oh my God, if I get another amazing idea that I don't feel like following through with, I'm going to shoot myself, because I have a lot of creative inflow, and, early on, I'm like, I wanted to do it all. And then like, I didn't end up doing any of it.
Yeah, and it just sort of dies in the vine.
It'd be overwhelming. Yeah. And that's why it's really important to tune into the subconscious pieces, because they're your intuitive guide, to help like what is yours and what isn't yours, because the mind is, the imagination is limitless, but our human capacity actually has some limitations. And so tuning into where our healthy boundaries are is important. And that's, connecting with the subconscious, and all the guidance that's in there is going to help you align more with your purpose, with your life's purpose. Because I don't know if you've heard your mess is your message, and if you look at like every person that I deeply admire, if you look at their life story, their greatness is really based in all of the crap that they dealt with, which really only enforces that everything in your life is a gift. Actually your greatest ally are those challenges. But it's also, that's why it makes it so hard to get to that greatness, because it's painful. There's painful stuff in there, and so we avoid it. And then, yes, the mind can get distracted with all these awesome ideas, but they're not connected with that deeper wisdom. And also, if we have old stories that are like, you can't do it, you don't have what it takes.
That's the main.
Then we just set ourselves up for that failure over and over. And that's why it's so important to get those
programs up into the light so that they're not operating in a funky, out of alignment way. Yeah, thank you. Any questions? Any of you feeling like, oh my God, I'm gonna totally take this home and work on ABC? You don't have to say what it is, because probably personal, but anybody feeling inspired to take this practice home and start doing it?
What I like so far is curiosity of the mind, training the mind to be in curiosity and openness. Mm-hmm. And the other part of the mind that wants to kind of limit and structure or define is like this hijacking, like brain. It just shrinks things and restricts, and my body gets restricted. And so it's appealing, that part about the imagination being limitless. I believe it. And like, I know I have these amazing dreams at night. I wake up in the morning, it's like, where did the dream go? It's like it's like I'm fishing and I caught a big fish, but it fell back in the water. It's like, so there's something elusive about imagery, and definitely super powerful. One of the ways I access my images definitely is with movements, like just even like a shape or a shift of structure or a shape and movement. Every shape, every shift brings a different image. Mm-hmm. So that is a really good way for me to access images. I can access images that way. Something becomes more elusive when I'm trying to define it. Mm-hmm. And so the limitless doesn't want to be defined. Okay. So then it's like a puzzle.
Yeah, and that might be a subconscious pattern that's afraid of limitation, afraid of the limit. So they definitely engage with each other.
Yeah, that resonates. I'm sure there's some fear of limitations. That's probably true. So what is your response to that fear of limitations?
I would go in and find out what, make friends with it, start talking to it, in a friendly, accepting and curious kind of way, and find out. Because me telling you what I would do with it is irrelevant. That's what I like about what I do, is it's not me sharing with anybody guidance about what they need to do with their life, because we all have different values, we all have different resources, we all have different goals, and so going in and finding out what that part of you has to say, how I would have no idea. I would just support you and make you friends with it, listening to it, because all of those voices inside have your best interest in mind. It's just like I said, it's just survival level practices. And that's why it keeps you spinning your wheels, and at the end of the day, oh, you got through, you're still alive. But it sure feels like you were fighting tooth and nail and maybe chased by a jaguar to get to the end of that day, It's just like, because that's what's running the show. And if we can get it up and, start the conscious dialogue, inviting it up to the dinner table, like, let's be friends, I'm going to listen to you now, and quit avoiding you, then it becomes an ally. And then you have a lot more clarity.
Yeah, I think that was a great analogy about the cut. If there's a cut on the arm, you can go, oh, I'm going to tend to it. Whereas if it's a judgment thought, it's like, oh, I want to just like get it out of me, and I get angry with that part, and so there's this banishment of parts that don't feel friendly. To be friendly to the parts that feel unfriendly. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah, humans are the only living species that behave that way. Like in nature, everything's important. There's no such there's no garbage in nature. But humans have created the concept of garbage, and we've labeled parts of ourselves as garbage. It's actually really important. So that's why I call it composting, like letting it create new life, letting things go, metabolize them, and it's all part of the self. Like you've got your one self. And when we cut those parts away, like we're dismembered, we're not fully embodied. And when we're not fully embodied, we literally can't see as well. We can't hear as well. We can't perceive as well. We certainly don't learn as well. And it doesn't feel very good either. It doesn't feel safe. We're more likely to have accidents and to get sick. So it's really important to reconnect and remember ourselves.
Sarah, what do you think about the concern of getting too engrossed in the process of spiritual composting? Is it,
Too engrossed?
yeah, sometimes it seems like too introspective when in fact what you need to do is get out there and get some
Practicing.
results in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, well then that's also the resistance showing up and distracting you, from actually doing the thing. So there's still a subconscious pattern that's in there. So yeah, anything can be a distraction. So I said those patterns are really wise. That's what's really helpful. What I was going to say is, if you do venture into those subconscious realms, it is pretty wise to have somebody that can give you some really reliable feedback or reflection. Because if, some people can get very ungrounded doing it, if there's trauma in there, going and digging around on your own, it's not necessarily that safe. It's really good to have somebody that knows, that's familiar with that can hold space for you, that can reflect to you. I think you're getting a little too caught. You're like 5 hours a day, you're doing the spiritual composting and you're not doing anything with your life. Then you're not actually doing it. You're not actually doing the spiritual composting. It's something that looks like that, which the resistance is super good at. It's super good at logic and reason and talking us into the thing that sounds perfect. Why you can't? Of course I can't. Of course I can't make that happen. I don't have enough education. I wasn't born into the right family. I don't have the right connections. I don't have this or that or the other thing. There's all kinds of, or I got to go do my spiritual composting. I can't actually, go out there and like apply for that job I really want. It's all delay tactics. It's all resistance that's running the show. So you're not actually doing the composting if it's keeping you from living your life. It's just an illusion. Good one. I like that question. Yeah.
In your practice, we kind of just touched on it a second ago, but I at least for me, I don't think it's very possible to do this spiritual composting on my own by myself without a guide, without support or help, as you just pointed out. So I've done and been to and taken part in lots of different workshops and therapies and modalities that do this in different traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious, like how do you do it in your practice? How do you provide that support?
Yeah. Well, it's unique for each person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. It's like everybody has different values. They have different strengths. Their resistance, which is the guardian of your subconscious patterns. Resistance is out there like protecting all that stuff and denial, and it's got all those reasons. And the way it shows up for every person is different. And so the way that you and I would work together is probably going to be completely different than the way that Mark and I would work together, or Brian and I would work together. Because the work that I do is about how do we gently, and how do we treat ourselves kindly and gently so that these parts are willing to come up out of the shadows and have a conscious dialogue. And depending on how, like I said, most of the time, once those subconscious patterns realize like, oh my God, she's not here to judge me again. I'm not going to get flailed again with the same old labels. She actually wants to hear what I have to say. Really. She seems like she likes me or might be willing to like me. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, the response is like, oh my God, I got so much to tell you. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like, now you want something from me? Take a hike. Sometimes it hides and there's total silence when we first start going in. It's good at hiding, it's not sure that it's safe, and it just takes consistent, how do you build a trusting relationship with another human being? It's the same concept, It can take a lot of creativity and intuitive, I'm pretty good at it. I've been doing it my whole life with myself, and it's my passion. It's what I'm kind of obsessed with when people are talking and like, oh, they said this thing, but then they did that thing. I wonder why. And so that's just the way that my brain has been working since I was a little kid. And so I'm really good at pinpointing it, and have realized that it's so much more helpful that instead of me pointing it out, like, oh, look, this is your problem. Like, nobody wants to hear that. Like, how do we make it a gentle connection so that this part wants to be seen and not criticized? Mm-hmm. So it's going to be unique for you. Mm-hmm. How easy is it for you to be kind and loving with those patterns? There was one woman I worked with for 2 years, which is a long time. Usually the work that I do, people move through stuff really fast. Sometimes a season or less, 13 weeks or less. They can break through some pretty big stuff. But I worked with her for 2 years, and she came to me, she had lost her fiance to cancer. And it brought up a whole bunch of stuff, and she just didn't feel like she was worthy of being happy. She didn't feel like she was worthy of getting over it. She felt like she owed it to him to just be miserable the rest of her life. And so me even suggesting that she might possibly be happy pissed her off. She got very angry with me about it and didn't want to say anything. So it took a long time for me to just build the relationship with her as a person-to-person experience. And then to start creating her relationship with the subconscious. So I had a friend, he's a friend now, but he was a client, and he's a plumber. And he said, your job is a lot like mine. You don't know what you're gonna get, the plumbing's broken. Then you open up the wall, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much more than I thought, or, oh, no problem, easy, little fix it. You just don't know what kind of stuff you're gonna find in there. Sometimes I have a lot of people that come to me for their business. That's my doorway my marketing is I ask, I tell people I'm gonna help them with their business. I have a lot of people that come to me with their business stuff, and then I find out there's abuse and trauma, and that's affecting their relationships, and it's affecting their health. And so again, it's like that plumbing thing, it's like it's affecting a lot of different stuff, and whatever is most critical in the moment is the piece that we want to connect with. So thanks for asking. That was a super long answer, and it still didn't probably give you an answer. It looks different for everybody. Sure. And basically I work with, where are your strengths? Where's your comfort? Let's build from there. And how can we push your comfort zone? Because it's always going to be pushing somebody outside their comfort zone. Because we're living in our comfort zone, because the survival stuff has got us on alert. And so we're always trying to find, where can I be comfortable? So how can we take baby steps to push the comfort zone just a little bit, to make a little bit of progress? And I found that the slower that we go, and the gentler and the least agenda possible you can have, creates the fastest transformation for people. Because we're just trying to be kind to ourselves, kind and loving, and it's just like that. It's very disarming to those subconscious patterns. They're used to us reacting in fear or anger, or like there's something wrong with you. And as soon as we're open-minded and our heart's compassionate, it's like, oh, I don't really have much to defend against. Cool. So we're getting close to the end of our time, and I want to invite you. So I do one-on-one mentoring, and I also have programs that I offer, and I'd like to invite you to, if you're interested in staying in touch with me, I would like to gift you with 60 minutes of my time. It's called a Breakthrough to Success Discovery Session, and we talk about where you are now. Get a good picture of what's happening in your life right now, what might be possible for you, what your goals are. Maybe I might push your edge a little bit. If your imagination feels a little limited, I'll help you kind of fill that in a little bit. And we'll look at some of the subconscious patterns that might be keeping you stuck. And if it feels like a good match, then I will offer to, be your success mentor. And if it's not, then I send you off with some helpful practices or other resources to make sure that you can take this work forward. Cool? Yeah, awesome. So I have a sign-up sheet right here. You're welcome to sign up. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you to the people on the other side of the web or in the web. Thanks for showing up. And thank you for Malin for inviting me to come and speak. It's been really
pleasure and an honor.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you.